Hello, and welcome back to the Dynasty Wonderland podcast. That's right, with me, the Mad Chatter Ryan MK, and of course, by my side, the Maj Heron, the Celery Captain, Aaron Stewart. What's up, buddy? How we doing?
Oh, doing good, man. Doing good. A perfect way to kick off a Monday. This was some Monday night football,
Yes,
even though it was quite the game, but we'll get into that a little later. But survived Monday. That's always the
yes,
goal in life, right?
survived Monday, a chilly Monday. Uh,
Mhm.
it's, I mean, that Monday night game looked cold, but it was pretty cold here too in Denver. And as you were saying off pod, a little chilly there in Texas for Texas standards. So it's winter is coming. That is right. Winter is coming. Oh, speaking of winter is coming, I've been redoing the Game of Thrones books, right? And I was doing them audiobook wise, so listening to the books and doing it at work as I'm working. And I'm on the third book halfway through. Somehow I didn't realize my time with it was running up and it got returned without me knowing. And I tried to check it out again right away. And alas, it was gone. So now I'm sitting here and it says I should have it back within a week because there's more than one copy. But see, now I'm just ranting and raving about other shit. But so my Game of Thrones re-listen is how I'll phrase it. It is put on pause. I'm disappointed in that. Sorry, the winter is coming. That's just my crazy brain. Anyway, speaking of winter, it's December. Happy December, Mr. Aaron. The holiday season is in the spirit is in the air. We got lights all over the place. It's nice. It's nice. I enjoy this time of year. And, the kids running around. How many days till Christmas? Did it fucking count, man? You can count. But last year we
Surprised
did
they're
one
not
of those.
counting the hours.
Right. But last year we did one of those advent calendars, and some of them can be cool. But this year we were like, no, because last year the one we picked out was like an Avengers one, and this one had a different fucking little miniature Avengers book for every day. And holy shit, it just turned out to be a giant pain in the ass. I'm going to put it that way because they were not great books by any means. So it just, yeah. Anyway, I digress. I'm doing a lot of ranting already on this episode, but we continue on. Before we get to the Monday night game, we do have to take care of a little bit of maintenance, a little announcing, because we're going to have a little bit of a schedule change over the weeks. I'm going to pull it on for real quick here. Madcaps. So this week is going to be normal, how it normally is. But starting next week, okay, next week through the fantasy playoffs, okay, we're going to be doing this normal beginning of the week pod that we normally do. And then later on in the week, you'll get a couple of short videos, one from Aaron, one from myself. And we'll do that while the fantasy playoffs are going on. I'll kind of handle a Thursday night recap along with some infirmary chatter. Aaron will just kind of throw out a few things to look for in the coming week. And we'll kind of do that as we get into and through the playoffs. And then we get into the actual NFL playoffs. Oh, but before that, week 18. Week 18, probably going to be somewhat like week 17. So we figure let's get one pod that weekend and we'll kind of cover some of the Sunday action that happens, but we're going to kind of do a season review, dynasty outlook, maybe an off-season outlook, just kind of discussions like that. And then we hit the NFL playoffs once again, one pod weekly. And we're just going to try and talk Dynasty and DFS during the fantasy playoffs. Because as you know, this stuff does matter. Look at Leonard Fournette. Just Leonard Fournette himself, how much he was boosted by his playoff run. And it's carried over into this year, So that's just some of the stuff you need to look for during the NFL playoffs. It's not like it's useless for fantasy, right, Aaron? You know what I mean.
Right.
So that's kind of what the NFL playoffs will look like. And then after the Super Bowl, we'll get a nice final pod to wrap up the 2021 season. And then, cast ourselves off into the off season. And so that's kind of the plan, folks. That's kind of the plan schedule wise, what we're thinking about for the rest of the season and the playoffs. And then we'll probably take a little bit of a break after the season and, kind of hopefully we get figured out by then kind of how we want to attack off-season schedule. But that's down the road. We've still got a couple of months of football left and plenty to talk about tonight, Aaron. So we begin the Monday Night Football game. It was interesting. It was interesting to see a team that passed the ball 3 times win the football game. But it was impressive. Some of the running, man, I'll tell you, I mean, them boys were chewing up that Bills line. They really were. Damian Harris had a big breakout. Reminder, Stevenson had a few big runs. Damian Harris had another run, but he's hurt. There was something going on with him. I don't think he was even able to finish the game because he went out and then he came back in. But then on one run, it looked like he went off limp and hurt himself again, and you didn't really see him the rest of the game. So, but it was, Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson. Otherwise, wasn't a whole lot else from the Patriots. But between the running game and their defense, it was enough. And I'm a little worried about the Bills. I mean, because you look at next week, they got the Bucks, and then they got the Patriots again, this time in Foxborough. Now, I've got no issue with Josh Allen. I'm more than willing to admit I was kind of wrong on that dude. But I've also had a tough time trusting this Bills team because it seems like they've been fine against some of the lesser teams other than the Jaguars, but they've really kind of struggled against the better teams, and they don't do much in the way of rushing the ball. It just feels like when it gets put on Josh Allen's shoulders and there's a little bit of panic, that's when he kind of resorts to some of his, bad habits, I think. And so I think that's why we're seeing some of that. And it definitely makes me worry about the Bills in general. But, it's tough to even trust the offense fantasy wise consistently. You know what I mean? So I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, and we'll start with the Bills, and there are some legit concerns here because this was a rough loss, the home loss to the Patriots. But the other storyline on this is the Patriots. This is their 7th straight win. 7. They are the hottest team in the NFL, not just their conference, like the NFL. They are. They're looking unstoppable right now. And the defense, as you mentioned, just fantastic. Past 5 games, they've allowed 36 points in 5 games. They're averaging a touchdown allowed per game in today's NFL, which is so difficult. It's crazy. And then on offense, they give the double middle finger. They give the double middle finger to everyone. This game's a perfect example. I know it was a weird game, the snow, the wind, and everything.
Yeah, they just won the game throwing the ball.
By just running.
3 fucking, they pretty much,
that's all they did.
It was insane to watch. It was insane to watch. And most people would think that's a boring game, but I was almost on the edge of my seat, just like, they gotta pass. Are they gonna pass? They gotta pass it. I saw the one pass Mac Jones had to Jonnu Smith where he tipped it, caught it, beautiful. And I'm like, okay, he got that one out the way. He's going to settle down a little bit. Right. And especially when they were driving with the wind, I was just like, just waiting for them to pass it. Like, come on. Right. And they just weren't going to. And it was hard to blame them because Buffalo wasn't going to stop. My brother lives in Buffalo. He was sending me pictures of what that place looked like. The snow did die down, but it was windy as all hell. And, Josh Allen can throw a little bit in it because he's got that monster arm. But, I'm sure Buffalo fans had to be getting pissed, quit running the fucking ball. But, hey, they were chewing up yardage. I mean, obviously they had to punt a couple of times. But, I mean, the ground game was working. Why go away from it? Why have your rookie quarterback have to try and throw in that shit? So Sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
to add on with it, but you're right. It's just insane. Yeah, they just, it seems like they can beat you however,
And it's frightening because it's always important as we get ready for the NFL playoffs. If teams don't have an identity, they're not going to get that far. And we know what the Patriots are. The Patriots are going to keep it very simple with Mac Jones. They're not going to ask him to do too much. And he's been good in that role. And I don't see teams challenging him because Patriots, there's two things they do extremely well. One right now is they are running the ball extremely well, but then also the defense. The defense, as we discussed, is a powerhouse. So it's like, cool, you take away, I don't know, maybe you could stop the run game, but the defense, you still have to score on the defense. And so the Patriots, man, everyone thought the dynasty was over because they missed the playoffs last year. The slow start out the gate, 2-4, and Bill Belichick is just laughing. Not publicly, we never see him laugh, but he is just laughing at his house. He's laughing at the league. It's crazy for Buffalo. You know what? They were a popular pick in the AFC, and where the Patriots have substance, it seems that the Buffalo Bills are a little more sizzle. They got a little too fancy. We loved the team last year. And I think they got just a little too cute there. And the Patriots just went back to fundamentals. They went back and upgraded heavily on defense and the offensive line too. They really focused on that. They're like, oh, we don't have a star receiver. It doesn't matter. In this game, not a single receiver caught the ball. They don't care. They don't care about like, oh man, you guys spent so much money on 2 tight ends, because it works, because it allows, like, the reason I love tight ends in the game of football is because they're versatile. You want to be a passing offense? Cool. These tight ends are freaks, and they got 2 of the best. Like Jonnu Smith being an athletic freak, and Hunter Henry has been one of the better receiving tight ends in the game since he's entered the league. But also, it's the good thing about those guys is that, if you can have a passing offense with receivers, not all receivers can block in the run game, but tight ends, the very least, because they're just big bodies, they can at least be decent there. So interesting game. I'll talk more about one of their other division rivals a little later in the show, but Buffalo, there is concern, despite the fact they're 7-5 and they're still in the playoff hunt. Right? I don't have the standings pulled out, but everything's so close this year. It's like a weird year in the NFL.
And that's why I say they're a little bit in trouble, because now they got to go face the Bucks.
Right.
That's dangerous. I'm not sure entirely where that's at. I believe Tampa Bay, but I'll double check real quick.
It's at Tampa Bay. So
So they got to go to Tampa Bay. I mean, that's going to be tough. And then they got to go to Foxborough to face the Patriots again. And it's brutal. It gets to a point where if they don't find a way to win one of these 2, they're in a lot of trouble.
They are, because I just pulled up the standings too. They are clinging on to that last playoff spot, the number 7 seed.
They're in trouble. Of trouble.
And there are teams right there. I mean, there's only 4 teams with losing records in the AFC, and one of those teams is Miami, and I'll talk more about them a little later. They're surging too, so it's nuts. There's really only 3 teams in the AFC that entering week 14 have been eliminated from the playoffs. Like 13 teams this late in the season. Right. It's mind-blowing. It's crazy.
Okay. All right. Well, enough about that game. Let's kind of get into the rest of the week that was week 13. Normally the final regular season game for most fantasy leagues, but this year, I should say, rather, we've got the extra football game. And so there's a pushback. And so extra regular season fantasy game, because who wants to start the playoffs in week 14 when there's 4 teams on a bye, right? It's ridiculous. 4 teams on a bye in week 14. Come on, NFL. But anyway, so extra regular season game. So next week will be the regular season finale. We've got plenty to cover for this week. It looked like not the greatest slate of games, but there was actually some interesting stuff that went on. And we begin with off with their heads. And Mr. Aaron, please go first, my friend.
All right. So off with their heads. I did this last week too, because we get to this point of the season, we find ourselves kind of repeating ourselves with some teams. So I took a little bit of a dynasty approach. There was bad news that came out today from the New York Jets, and that's receiver Corey Davis, one of their big free agent signings. He's out for the season-ending core surgery. He's working on the abdomen area. And, people that have followed my work for the past couple of seasons, I've never been a fan of Corey Davis. But I do feel bad for the guy because he's dealt with some injuries to various things, hamstrings, hip, now core surgery. And the other thing, too, that I have to just kind of chuckle at is in Tennessee, he was usurped by one Mr. A.J. Brown. Then he goes to New York to presumably be the guy after having a very efficient season, a season where some people be like, you know what, he might be living up to that first round hype, being Devontae Parker 2.0. And, oh yeah, they drafted receiver Elijah Moore. And I mentioned those two guys because Corey Davis hates receivers that come from Ole Miss. They just come in, they take his job, they make him super sad. He's never been able to live up to the hype. And it's off of their heads with Corey Davis. Corey Davis, this is what he does in his career, is he will have a monster game that finishes in the top 10, followed by 3 to 4 weeks where if you start him, you're probably losing because it's just not even replacement level production. But because he has that one big game, you either hold on to him or you go, you know what, I'm done with this guy, I cut him, and then he has a big game and you find yourself bidding fab dollars on him. But at this point, I'm just done. Like, you can find boom bust guys. Hey, if I can ever get back to writing wide receiver cornerback articles, like I've been able to identify some of these guys. I don't want Corey Davis because I don't ever want to deal with, oh, I can't drop him because he has that upside. But it just, no, the thing is, he's never actually broken out. Like, people think he had his breakout season last year. That wasn't a breakout season. He still has never topped 1,000 yards in a season. Do you really want that on your team? No. So off with their heads, Corey Davis. I don't want him in any format. No redraft, no dynasty, no best ball. Maybe best ball, depending on where his ADP ends up being next year. But I don't know.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Honestly, I don't believe I have him rostered in any league. So he's not one I've ever been a fan of either. And so, yeah, no argument there at all. And I am going to go, for me, my first one, you spoke of trying not to be repeatable, anything like that. I'm repeating myself. Sorry. Urban Meyer, the Jaguars. Excuse me. These people give me fucking headaches. Laquan Treadwell is the leading receiver. I refuse to believe that is because he is the best player, best receiver, the best option on that team. I refuse to believe that. Even if there is something wrong with Laviska Shenault, and I'm a little worried at this point, but even if that's the case, that I don't buy Treadwell is better than even Marvin Jones. I mean, Marvin Jones is good. He's older now, but Marvin Jones is a hell of a receiver, and he's had some big games this year too. I refuse to believe in Treadwell. So, this is just ugly. Urban Meyer, he just always looks so damn down about, like, I'm just like, you can go ahead and quit already, because I feel like that's what he wants to do. Go ahead and do it because he's not doing this team any good. I mean, these are the kinds of situations I feel like that mess up quarterbacks, And so I don't, I'm just over it. And I'm totally worried about, well, pretty much everyone in Dynasty, like, the longer this goes on, because, I mean, oh man, What Laviska Chenault, I mean, it's not just the profile, it's the breakout finder. It's everything with him. How is he like, I just don't I you got to be worried about him. You got to be concerned. I mean, going into this year, would you think you'd be more concerned about Laviska Chenault at this point in dynasty formats than you would about James Robinson?
Right. It's the short answer on that is going to be no. And especially if at that time, if we could travel back in time and without like spoiling what Chenault's season has been, you've been like, you can mention to your pass up, oh yeah, DJ Chark's going to get hurt and miss the rest of the season. And I'd be sitting there just going, I mean, I guess it would be celebrating an injury, but in terms of more on it's Chenault's season back then, like if I could go and tell myself that, I'd be like, yes, it's Chenault time. But it is crazy. And I pulled it up on Breakout Finder. You're right. Like Chenault with a 55.8 breakout rating. And it just goes to show too, it's like, at the end of the day with Dynasty, you're doing a probability game. And I don't think it was a bad process, right? It's because he was falling in Dynasty rookie drafts last year. And you usually could get him at a pretty good value. I mean, mid to maybe even late second round, depending on your leagues. And, I guess that's what might help. Like, yes, we expected the breakout, but him not breaking out, let's say that you got him, let's maybe pick 20 or so in Dynasty rookie drafts, or even like pick 16, like 16 to 20 pick range. And I'd have to go and check. Maybe his ADP was a little different, but I remember him slipping big time because he didn't run at the combine or no, he ran, but he ran injured and it wasn't up to the numbers that we thought it would be. Right. That may help a little bit. It's like, okay, like this guy didn't break out, but the truth be told is that second round picks don't usually break out, but it's difficult to see a guy with his profile just do nothing. And I think you hit the nail on the head here. It's just the Urban Meyer effect. It's how can you mess up so many things? And it's looking at the box score, and I get it. That doesn't tell the whole story, but my God, like it's just so freaking bad. Like they don't have a lack of talent. It's like, how is Trevor Lawrence at this point of his rookie season not even passing for 150 yards?
Yeah.
It's
such a mess. It's such a mess.
Yeah.
You do wonder how much of it is with Urban Meyer, but still like it's kind of one of those things. We've talked about it before. You relying on that third year breakout for a receiver. I mean,
I think that's been debunked too at this point. Is truth be told, especially, and that may be because the NFL's changed. But it's if you don't show something quick, they will quickly replace you. Right. And you can look at Philadelphia just briefly. With Philadelphia, it's like boom, Jalen Reagor, or no, what was it? It was they drafted Jalen. Yeah, they drafted Jalen Reagor. Oh no, this guy isn't like what we thought, and especially hurts when Justin Jefferson's the next pick. And what do they do the following season? Hey, first round pick. They trade up to take Javonte Smith. So NFL's changed. It's rare. Usually if you're a player and you don't show anything in the second season and you're getting playing time, it's not a good sign. And that was exactly what I talked about with Chenault and Brian Edwards on last week's show. Is like,
you did bring up Chenault last week. My bad. I repeated myself and you.
No, that's okay, because I think it's worth emphasizing that. Like, look, like once again, Chenault, 3 catches, 30 yards, 5 targets. Like, could the third year breakout happen? Sure. Like there's always a probability of anything happening, but my goodness, you can't really have a better situation than this. You're competing with Marvin Jones and Laquan Treadwell. Quite frankly, I mean, Treadwell has been outplaying Chenault, and Marvin Jones on the entire season has been the better receiver.
Right.
Not looking good. Not looking good at all.
It stings. It stings so much we spent way too much time on that. So go with your next off with their heads.
This one pains me. Another dynasty player that I'm concerned with in the long term, Chase Edmonds. Some of it is due to the unfortunate injury, because what happened during the injury, James Conner happened and emerged and showed that he could be a bell cow. And it's James Conner being the bell cow shows that, look, we love the profile of Chase Edmonds. And even this season, he's been super efficient. He's been top 5 in breakaway run rate and juke rate while having an increased role. Like, I feel like he's a good fantasy running back, except when I dug into the numbers there. So far, in terms of a points per game basis, he's never finished inside the top 30 at his position. Never. And this is his third. Is it a third season or fourth season? It's third? No, fourth? I don't know. Like, he's been in the league, especially for running backs. These are the years that are going to be most productive, usually. Yeah. And the concern is the Cardinals have never made Chase Edmonds the bell cow. He's been saved in PPR leagues because he catch passes, and that is good, but he still doesn't get a lot of the high value touches, especially when they get close to the goal line. And then he's injured, and teams are weird about these things. Like, it could be the first big injury he's ever suffered, and the team will be like, nope, we can't use him. And the vibe I get, it's like Duke Johnson. It's Duke Johnson, where, and I was a truther for Duke Johnson and kept going. Anytime he'd go somewhere, he'd go to Houston. It's like, yes, he's going to Houston. They're going to unlock this guy. And they don't. And it's, that's the vibe I get with Chase Edmonds. It's never going to happen to the extent that we thought it was going to happen.
I have to agree.
And that's why in Dynasty, like, the tough thing is you can't say sell right now, because it's not the right time, because he's injured and everything. The time to sell was really this past off season. I sold my Chase Edmonds shares at the end of last season, and I didn't quite get the window right on that one, because I traded him thinking Cardinals they're gonna bring in a guy to replace, not replace, but like a guy to be what James Conner is. So I guess in a way it was like I was right. I just thought it would be through the draft and not actually bringing in James Conner.
Right.
But off with their heads with Chase Edmonds, I feel like he's going to be overdrafted next year, because they very well may draft a running back next year. Because now it's really bothering me. Is this Chase Edmonds' third or fourth season? Because it matters based on his contract. So Chase Edmonds, when did he enter the league? It was 2018. So he's going to be a free agent, I believe. I don't think he ever signed an extension. So yeah, it ain't ever happening. Like, he'll be just productive enough, kind of like Corey Davis, where you go, I can't get rid of him. And he has those big games where you go, yes, for the truthers. And I was an original truther, but then I became a realistic truther and going, okay, like, I'm going to capitalize on this hype and get out from underneath him and get some draft picks. But yeah, no contract extension. So he is going to be a free agent, and you have to wonder, are they going to resign him? Like, I just, I don't know. And already he'll be 26 years old next season. It's Duke Johnson. It's Duke Johnson 2.0 in all the wrong ways.
Can't say I disagree with you. I know I say that a lot, either that I can't disagree with you or I agree with you. And part of it is that I really can't. I don't have a lot to add. And the other part of it is, it's like, well, I guess keep it moving, because I don't really got shit to say. You know what I mean? So
I think it's because, and for listeners, Ryan and I do disagree on things, but we have a similar thought process and how we analyze the stuff from just years of playing this game. So
for sure.
Whew. Poor Chase Edmonds. We'll pour one out.
Yeah. It's a bummer. Also a bummer, Broncos management. And really, this second off with their heads, this kind of goes out to all the teams that are essentially a QB away. The Niners. Now, we think they have that QB on their team, but either they're being stupid or Lance isn't ready. And he didn't quite look it. And, when he was starting, I'd like to see more. But again, he might need some time to develop. But I would think best way to learn is being out there on the field. But, it's just not like it used to be. Not like it used to be in the NFL. Dudes don't just sit, And I don't know. And then you look at the Panthers. They're on a bye. No Christian McCaffrey. He's done for the season. If they had a quarterback, and I had some hope for Cam that he was going to be solid and at least fun, and he had some decent stuff, and then, not so great game. And so we'll see what happens from there with no Cam Newton. But they passed on Justin Fields and Mac Jones, and as did the Broncos. And it's just terrible because the defense is actually pretty good. And that game against the Chiefs, man, they had a chance if that offense was at all capable. And it's not the offense entirely because there is some fucking weapons on that team, as we'll get into. But it just bums me out because that team could be really good. And they got Teddy and Drew Lock. And I love Teddy. I thought he was once upon a time the guy for the Vikings. And shit just hasn't panned out. And he is what he is, whether that's what he's been all along or that's what he is since the injury. It doesn't matter. It is what he is. So it's just that I'm just over these stupid teams. Get your fucking quarterbacks now. We've got several teams that could use a quarterback, and we're going to have some coming out in the draft. And then we could potentially have Aaron Rodgers or maybe Russell Wilson out there available. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason quarterback-wise. And the Broncos better do something, enough pissing around with this quarterback situation because they've been doing this for fucking years now. And really, so have the Panthers because they went Teddy. And then they tried Darnold, and now they're with Ken. So, those two in particular, get your shit together. Get some quarterbacks for your teams. But that being said, we conclude off with our heads and we move on to the mad observations. And we have to begin it with the one good thing about Denver's Sunday night performance that there is to talk about. There is one good thing to say about that. And what is that, Mr. Aaron?
Number one mad observation from your salary captain, but also I think it's a mad observation from you too, Ryan, is that Javonte Williams happened in a big way. Finally, the very first game that Melvin Gordon didn't play, Javonte Williams finished with a stat line of 23 carries, 102 yards. And then through the air, added 6 catches, 76 yards, and a touchdown to finish as the RB1 in fantasy football in week 13. And people, if you have been listening to the show since the offseason, you know Javonte Williams was not just my RB1 of this draft, of the 2021 draft class, but he was Ryan's RB1 of the 2021 draft class. We planted our flags when everyone was going Najee or Travis Etienne, Najee, Travis Etienne. And we said, look, Najee, you make the case if you happen to be a playoff contender that managed to get the 101 and you needed to go all in to win this season. Yeah, Najee was always going to be the better contributor in year one. And we were having to wait for this Melvin Gordon situation because Gordon's the last year of his contract. It could happen. It was definitely going to happen next year, but could happen this season. And we had to be very, very patient, paid off in a big way for Javonte Williams. If we could have played dance music, we'd have a dance party. We absolutely won. Look, people, Dynasty doesn't have to be hard. It really, really doesn't. You just have to look for the right things. And a lot of people focused on an underwhelming 40-yard dash, a 4.62. That's not good, but it's not the end of the world either with Javonte Williams. Like, he had his other athletic traits, I think, helped balance that underwhelming 4.62 40-yard dash. And I encourage people, pull up Javonte Williams in Player Profiler. And then in another tab, pull up Aaron Jones in Player Profiler. Do the comparison. I have it. It's an article. I had a range of outcomes article for a lot of the top prospects of this past draft class. And with Javonte Williams, you do side-by-side comparison. He is a slightly less explosive Aaron Jones. And this game and seeing what he did, especially in the receiving game, I mean, the Broncos got beat 22-9. How does a running back finish as the top running back in fantasy football when his team put up 9 points and got beat?
He's the fucking man.
It's crazy. He's the man. He's the man. And my last thing on this one is the other things you look for is Najee and ETN. I said it. Ryan said it. Like, the reason we didn't like those two guys as being the RB1 in the class is they could have came out the season before. And the reason they didn't is they weren't even like in the top 7 at the running back position last year's class. And that's the phenomenal class that had Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, some studs there. But even like behind Cam Akers and J.K. Dobbins, I know they both got injured, but they were both superior prospects. Like Najee and Etienne, if they were your 101, if they were your top running back in rookie drafts, like that just tells me that you really don't know what you're doing in Dynasty, quite frankly. I'm quite blunt on that, but no, like, and I get it. We haven't seen Etienne. Maybe Etienne will be fine, but he's not going to be Javonte. You best believe that.
Yeah, man. I love Javonte. And I even got some dance music for us. For Javonte! We're totally ripping off the pod father. I hope you realize that.
Denza para denza, la boca della coca. Grande l'agua entre Paula Villa Vida Loca.
We love us some Javonte Williams. So you gotta love that. You gotta love the dance party for the Javonte Williams. It's a reason to celebrate. We touted this dude, and hey, he fucking did it. He performed when he given the opportunity. That's all we wanted to see. That's all we wanted to see. So now we know where we at with Javonte heading into next year, and that's good to know. My first observation after our short little dance party: lightning strikes in Cincinnati. Man, this game was actually, like, obviously I do the red zone thing. I sit and watch the red zone, but this game was constantly on the red zone. And really, since he was making a bit of a comeback, man, until poor Joe Mixon fumbled the football. And then it was kind of seemed over after that. But see, this is the Chargers offense that we expected, right? I mean, Herbert, over 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Okay. Eckler, 59 yards and a touchdown carrying the ball, 5 receptions, 45 additional yards. You know, Keenan Allen didn't get a ton of yardage, coupled with touchdowns. Mike Williams over 100 yards. Jalen Guyton, 90 yards and a touchdown. So when they're doing this, man, not only are they fun, but they're going to be tough to beat, and their defense was playing well. And, Cincinnati is just continuing to show some of the inconsistency. But again, we've seen a lot of that from the Chargers. So they're pretty similar teams when you think about it. So it's going to be interesting to see how this goes down the stretch. One of these teams make the playoffs, both of these teams. But it's nice to see the Chargers have a game like this, and I just want to see it more consistently. But that's what I got. Lightning in Cincinnati. This was one of the games I was more interested in leading up to the week, and it went not quite how I expected, but it was a fun game to pay attention to. So that's what I got for that one. What about you, Aaron? Any thoughts on this game?
just last week when we were previewing the show, we just mentioned how important a game because of the AFC playoff picture being that everyone is still jockeying for playoff position, how important it was. And probably slightly more important for the Chargers, mainly because they lose that game. You're 6-6. You're not, they wouldn't be in the playoff picture if the playoffs started. So it was nice to finally see, as you mentioned, the Chargers offense that we all thought we were going to see this entire season. And probably the only other thing I got ahead is now Keenan Allen's on the COVID list. And you're like, oh my goodness. Like,
oh, I know.
Just if that's not Chargers, right? Like, like right as something good happens, they always are just struck by bad luck. And I hope I'm not jinxing it for the Chargers. But guess what? Their special teams is ranked dead last. And I know this was a long time ago. It's crazy to think this was 11 years ago. The Chargers had that one season. They were the number one offense, number one scoring offense, number one scoring defense. But they had the worst special teams, and they finished 9-7 to make the playoffs. Sorry, Chargers. I hope I did not speak that into existence. But once again, the worst special teams in the league. Will that be their downfall? And, with how tight that playoff race is, like something like that is the deciding factor. So Get your stuff together, Chargers. You still have 5 games. Sorry, the 17th game really throws off math for me.
Yeah, it definitely does. Definitely does. All right, what's your second observation, buddy?
All right. I alluded to this when we talked about the Patriots and the Bills game. But the Bills are in trouble because there's another division rival of theirs that is red hot right now, the Miami Dolphins. And specifically, my label for this is Tua time. It's their 5th straight win. They were 1-7. They were dead in the water, and it was like, like they have their first round pick. Oh no, they traded it. That's right. But since then, it's like they realize, okay, we can't tank again, even though they're used to tanking in recent seasons because there isn't a reason to tank. They've seemingly turned it around, and it starts at quarterback. Tua Tagovailoa has gotten a bad rep. It's like it's like we have him under the microscope, right? And anytime he screws up, makes like one mistake, like people are like, no, he's done. And it doesn't help when his team has been actively shopping him for Deshaun Watson. And it also doesn't help when another Alabama quarterback, the one that came in after him, Mac Jones, is doing as well as he is as a rookie in the same division too.
Right.
So it's good to see for Tua because he is, this game, perfect example, 30 of 41 passing, roughly 75% completion percentage. He had a couple of games in recent weeks where he's completed over 80% of his passes. He's not getting the huge yardage. This game, 244 yards. We had a couple of touchdowns, no turnovers, which that's been the key thing because Tua has been super accurate. And I don't know if it was last week or the week before. It was something like he only had 6 incompletions, but of course one went for an interception. Just a killer. And I think we are seeing, thanks to this win streak, people are realizing that he has in fact improved because it's a shocking thing that there could be players that struggle, especially as rookies, and they improve. It blows people's minds.
Right.
And it's nice to see. And with Miami, just keep Tua, try to build something around him because if you give up on them, like you are just a laughing stock of a franchise, and a franchise that honestly, a few years ago, like I saw what they were doing. I was like, I like what they're doing. Like there's a plan in place, but they've made some crucial mistakes in recent seasons with that rebuild that's led to them being this team that is, well, right around 500, where, last year they were a 10-win team and it was like they barely missed the playoffs, which like almost never happens as a 10-win team. But some of those crucial mistakes catching up to him, but they could still turn it around if Tua ends up being a franchise quarterback. And I think he can be. If you trade him, Miami, someone else is going to get a franchise quarterback. Don't do it, Miami.
Yeah, I always felt he was being treated a little bit unfairly, given the situation and everything. And I would say, I guess the one concern I would have with him is health. Because, he's not a bigger guy and he's already been beaten up in college. and banged up in the NFL. So the health aspect I want to keep an eye on. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that he's playing better. I mean, particularly after it's like, okay, you're the guy the rest of the season. That's got to help a tremendous amount. So good observation there, my friend. Miami is indeed on fire. On fire. So we go to my next observation. The Flock, they lost. The Flock's lost. And it was really, really close. They decided to go for a 2-point conversion to win the game. It just went off the tip of Mark Andrews' fingers. He was, so fucking wide open. It would have been over. And Lamar was just off, just a little bit, just enough. And he's been struggling a little bit lately. If you look over the past 4 games, over like even just looking at fantasy points, he hasn't topped 20 fantasy points. Now, one of those games he didn't play, but the other 3, less than 20 fantasy points. And so he's in a bit of a bad stretch. And you know me, I'm a Lamar fan. And for me, this is concerning. This is concerning a little bit. And I wonder if maybe all it is that all these fucking injuries they've suffered throughout the whole year, if it's just starting to catch up to them. Because it's not just him, but I mean the entire team. Offense, defense. But I mean, other than the lack of run game, which they've been dealing with all season, I mean, not a lot wrong with the offense. So you just got to wonder what's going on there. Because he's throwing the ball well this year. So I'm not sure what's going on lately. Just doesn't seem like he's been as sharp. And turnovers and shit like that, it's just Lamar is off, in my opinion. And as far as Pittsburgh goes, part of me is I want Baltimore to win this because I just want Pittsburgh to die. I'm ready for this version of the Steelers to be over. I don't need to see it anymore. Get out of here. Get Big Ben out of here. Just end it. I would like to see a new, more fresh version of the Steelers next year. I would like to talk about the 2022 Steelers eventually, but the 2021 Steelers, I'm over these motherfuckers. So that's another reason I'm disappointed. And not only did my guy Lamar lose, but they were supposed to take these motherfuckers and put them out their misery, and they didn't do it.
It's crazy. And
excuse me.
Those divisional games are a killer. It's why I never like betting on them. And especially the division of the AFC North. We're in December. Gets a little colder. You got those typical low scoring games like this. This was absolutely like a AFC North typical game. 1 week after what we had the Ravens Browns game that was also low scoring too. It's just, you're probably not going to see those like crazy performances. Mainly because in order to be a top fantasy quarterback, right? Like you usually have to like score touchdowns. So that's the downside of like a Lamar Jackson is just the division they play and the time of year.
Yes, indeed. Okay. So that would be, we're moving on to your third, I guess. Sorry.
My third one.
Stats.
My third one is, if you drafted this guy, it's been a rough season. And chances are you may not even be in the playoffs. But Mr. Antonio Gibson, since the bye week, has been playing very, very well. In 4 games, he has topped 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. And he's getting the usage we all hoped for. So he has, and I've got the stats here, there's been only 1 game of those 4 that he has seen below 26 touches. And in that game, he had 19 carries and shockingly had no targets. Now, that was a Week 11 game against Carolina. And there was still this guy named J.D. McKissick that was there to take work away from him in the passing game. Well, J.D. McKissick isn't there anymore. And we look at this past game with the Raiders, where you could already see the effects of J.D. McKissic not being there. Season high, 82% snap share. He, for a fourth straight game, 19 plus carries, he had 23 carries in this game for 88 yards. That's solid. It could be better, but getting all the carries, that's a good sign. And then in the receiving game, 6 targets. I want to say actually led the team in that game. There was a bunch of players with 5 targets, but Gibson's 6 targets, I'm pretty certain, led the team that week. He had 5 catches for 23 yards. So, and he scored a touchdown. He scored a touchdown to help get him to that 20 to the 20-point mark. But we are seeing the Antonio Gibson, especially you go the week before and he had 7 targets and caught all 7 of those for 35 yards. He's averaging 6.5 targets in 2 games. Small sample size, I know, but especially no J.D. McKissic. This is the Antonio Gibson everyone that was drafting him in redraft thought they were getting. But like that is also a good reflection on like you can't be upset with the season Antonio Gibson's had for 2 reasons. One, the shin injury. Like injuries happen, you can't predict them. But also, like, yeah, he in retrospect, going back and looking at the information we have now, he shouldn't have been drafted that high because there was a J.D. McKissic there that was still going to be involved. But if you were super patient with Antonio Gibson and you happen to just hang around and compete for the playoffs and make playoffs now, guess what? You just got a second half league winning running back right now. And it's like the 2 guys, it's like him and Elijah Mitchell off the top of my head. Those guys, right. The amount of work they're getting, like, and there doesn't seem to be any serious competition for those roles. That's exactly what you want. So it's exciting. Antonio Gibson, bell cow running back.
Yes. Well, I think him playing better also coincides a little bit with the team just in general. Because remember the team, like everybody was like, oh, this is going to be such a great defense. And then it did not look good in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And, it was supposed to be an offense led by Ryan Fitzpatrick, and he gets out hurt and he's been out, and it's Taylor Heineke's show. And so it's just, it might have just taken some time for the team as a whole, because they've been playing well in recent weeks, all around. Yeah. So it's, I think it's a combination of factors. I think you make good points, but it's, this is definitely more of what, people who were bought in to McKissic, Gibson, this is more what we expected. So it's definitely good to see. I certainly wasn't panicked about him, but this is definitely nice to see his work recently for sure. Right. So, all right, my next one, godlike. And this is for Chris Godwin, who had 15 receptions for 143 yards, most receptions by a wide receiver in a game so far this season. I think Waller had somewhere around that, maybe even more, but this is for wide receiver. I heard the stat earlier. Wish I could remember to source it in case it's wrong. So Chris Godwin killing it along with Jonathan Taylor. 143 yards himself. So both players with 143 yards. And then Jonathan Taylor added a couple of touchdowns to the mix. So, both teams, Colts got the big win. Another team that's just fucking on fire right now. It's too bad they didn't beat the Bucs. They should have beat them because they'd be right there with the Titans. I mean, this is a team that if they can make it in the playoffs, man, they're going to be dangerous potentially. So you got the Colts and then the Bucs just smashing the Falcons. We did get a little bit out of Patterson, but if I remember right, but just not a very competitive game at all. But even though 31-17, you think it's not that bad, but
Tom Brady contributed 6 of those 17 points for the Falcons.
That's very true. That's very true. I do remember that too. And I also remember, I totally forgot to bring it up when I was talking the Bengals Chargers game, but it was a crazy ass pick where Jamar Chase had it, but then he bobbled it, and the Chargers defender just took it away from it. It was a great play by the Chargers. I wish I could remember who that was, but great play by the Chargers defender on that one. So some interesting interceptions this weekend. But anyway, I digress. So yes, couple of big time wins for the Bucks and the Colts, two teams that played recently. And yeah, you just got to wonder what the hell is going on with the Falcons. They need all sorts of shit. They need a new quarterback. They need a running back. I mean, they got Patterson, but he's kind of like a mixed bag. He's like a special weapon. They need an actual running back in there too, I would think. And I just did, yeah, this is another team. Just fucking get rid of them. I'm tired of talking about them. Next year. So that's what I got for that. Godlike. Mr. Chris Godwin is very godlike this week. And Jonathan Taylor continues his godlike season, just kicking some ass. And yeah, so that's what I got.
And one thing I do want to add to Jonathan Taylor, because it's always amazing how good of a player he is. In this game, he topped 20 fantasy points in PPR leagues. Now, that's not the shocking thing at all. The dude has been doing that consistently since the end of last season. I want to say in like his last 18 games. Yes, it was his last 18 games. 11, he has scored 20 fantasy points or more. And there's 3 other games where he has been really close with 19 fantasy points. It's crazy to see how good he has been. Now, the thing that was impressive about this game was he didn't catch a single pass. Like, that's incredibly difficult to score 20 fantasy points when in points per reception leagues, like you're getting a point just for catching the ball. You don't catch the pass. And for those people, because you always have to do a Jonathan Taylor CEH comparison. We're obligated. Ryan and I work for Player Profiler as writers, contributors to help the brand. Like, so there's an obligation. Like when we're brought on, we're told that we have to discuss this at some point in anything that we do. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the last time he scored 20 fantasy points or more in a PPR league was week 11 of 2020. It's poor Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Just each passing week, the gap between him and Jonathan Taylor just gets wider and wider and wider. Hopefully, listeners, you made the right choice. And if you didn't, we had dance party for Javonte Williams. I don't know, we can have like a cry corner for those that went Clyde Edwards-Helaire over Jonathan Taylor.
We certainly could. Okay, Aaron. So now, for your final observation of week 13.
So in my previous Mad takeaway from week 13, I talked about Antonio Gibson and the work he was getting on the ground, along with Elijah Mitchell, and how those guys could be the potential league-winning running backs in the second half due to their volume. But there's another guy like that was a league winner last season, and that was David Montgomery based on the volume. And that's a perfect transition to my last takeaway, which is, David Montgomery. 21 carries for 90 yards and a touchdown on the ground, while also catching 8 passes on 9 targets for 51 yards. 29 touches. Volume is key. The Bears offense, not good, especially with Andy Dalton throwing 4 interceptions. So it's remarkable that David Montgomery, despite the horrendous quarterback play, can go out there, give you, 141 yards from scrimmage and a touchdown. And hey, there's no competition for him at running back. He may have a 2020 second half David Montgomery season in 2021. Wheels up for David Montgomery. He's been the only player that looks good in the Chicago Bears offense this whole season.
I don't know. Khalil Herbert looked good there for a minute.
That's true. He was a flash for a moment, and now does he even get any work? Like it's sad. I think he should get like something, but
for sure.
But David Montgomery, legit guy.
Yep. And not bad on the other side from the Cardinals.
Nice to see Kyler back on the field, and that's going to be a tough team to beat in the playoffs because they're another team that can do a lot offensively, and they got a pretty good defense. So it'll be interesting. Now, for my final observation, I have some miracles to talk about, some magical moments. First of all, there's the Minshew mustache magic is back. It is back. It is back. And the Eagles kick some ass with Minshew at the helm. If anybody's thinking, oh my God, is there a QB controversy? The coach's words after the game said, nah. Hurts has been pretty special, and he's been great this year. So no, but it's nice to know. I mean, you got Minshew in there as a backup. That's a hell of a backup to have. Yeah. So that was cool. And then, of course, the miracle of the Motor City. There was magic happening in Detroit. And that is the Lions getting their first win of the season over the Vikings. And I'm telling you, this was the last game on Game Pass of the early games, so there was a lot of it being shown. And after the Vikings went down and scored, you just figured, well, it's over. The Lions aren't going to drive this down with a minute and a half left or whatever it was to win the fucking game with Jared Goff. This is no DeAndre Swift. This is not happening. And yet it did. It did, Aaron. It fucking did. Equinemius St. Brown, first touchdown catch of the season for the first Lions win of the season over the Vikings, who were, right in the playoff mix and technically still are. But after beating the Packers, they've really not done their job following that up with wins against lesser teams. And although I guess it hasn't mattered much fantasy-wise because Justin Jefferson's still kicking ass. Although Adam Thielen, it's a bummer. High ankle sprain. He's going to be out a minute. And then as far as this game, I also wanted to mention Alexander Madison had himself another solid game in Cook's absence. And meanwhile, Mr. Aaron was correct. And Jamal Williams, I mean, not terrible, but nothing special either. Jamar Jefferson, Godwin, Igwebukes. Okay, I can't even say his name right. But they got some work. So, the Lions get the win. I'm happy for the Lions. That's why I had to bring it up. And I'm happy for Gardner Minshew. It's nice to see him back on the field because I've been a fan. And, I think that's about else I got. Oh, you know who didn't give me some magic this week? That's Foster Moreau. I expected more out of Foster Moreau. Well, and the Raiders as a whole this weekend, but it is what it is. This is Washington's playing well. Again, we talked about that. So that's what I got. I think we can go ahead and end this bad boy. Do you have any final thoughts? Is there anything else that we didn't cover? We didn't talk a whole lot about Seahawks beating the Niners. Finally got some action out of Russ, Aaron, right? And the Rams are back on the winning track. Odell caught a touchdown. So both of those NFC West teams looking a little bit better, at least for a week.
Yeah, and with those guys, I don't really have anything to add on those. I think we hit like the most important stuff, and really the only thing I'd say, nothing about the rest of the games, but if you're listening to us on YouTube, make sure give us a subscribe if you like it. Like the video, it helps. It's if you want more people to hear us. Maybe not your league mates. Maybe we are the secret weapon, right? That's been able to give you some good advice, but we could use some help here. It helps keep us going, and we're producing content. Also, Twitter's our primary social media. You can find me at AaronStew09. We have our Dynasty Wonderland podcast. That's at DW_pod on Twitter. And Ryan, where can they find you on Twitter?
At RMK Madness on Twitter and Instagram, where you can also find my stuff for my non-sports podcast, the Miscellaneous Debris podcast. I know, shameless plug, have to get it in there because I do. So yeah, that's where you can find me. And as Aaron said, you know where to find the pod. So make sure you do get us likes, subscribes, all that good stuff, all that good stuff. And here, eventually, I mean, it'll probably not be till obviously the off season now, but we're gonna get that Patreon going, get that figured out, so that we can really start trying to blow this motherfucker up. You know what I'm saying, Aaron? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. That's all I got. I know that's all you got. Good show, my friend. And we move on.
Great.
We move on. We'll be back Thursday night, and that'll be our last Thursday night show of the season. So hope you enjoy it. I know we will. And then if you need a reminder of the new schedule, folks, just go back to the beginning of the pod and check it out and listen. Didn't get that on loud enough. Oh, that's where this dude's at. Okay, everyone, thank you once again for joining from the Mad Chatter, Salary Captain. We're going to get the hell out of here. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you next time. But until then,